The crystal chandeliers of the sterling cast fractured light across white tablecloths like shattered diamonds. Maya Chun moved through the dining room with the practiced grace of someone who had learned to become invisible while remaining indispensable. Her worn sneakers made no sound against the polished marble floor, a stark contrast to the click of designer heels and the murmur of conversations worth more than her monthly rent. She balanced 3 plates along her left arm, seared duck, truffle risotto, and a deconstructed dessert that cost more than her electricity bill, and navigated between tables with the precision of a dancer who knew every inch of her stage. The ring caught the light as she set down the first plate. It always did. A simple band of white gold, wrapped around her right index finger, embedded with a single sapphire the color of midnight water. Not large enough to be ostentatious, but striking enough that people noticed. The stone seemed to hold depths, layers of blue that shifted depending on the angle, the light, the time of day. Maya had worn it for 3 years, ever since she'd found it tucked inside a donation box at the community center where she volunteered on Sundays. No name, no note, just the ring nestled in tissue paper at the bottom of a box of winter coats. She tried to find the owner, posted notices, asked around the neighborhood, even taken it to 2 different jewelers who'd both whistled low and told her it was worth keeping safe. Custom made, they'd said. Probably an heirloom. But no one claimed it, and after 6 months of searching, Maya had slipped it onto her finger. Felt right there, like it had been waiting for her hand specifically. Her abuela would have called it destino, fate recognizing itself. Miss! The man at table 7 gestured with 2 fingers, the universal sign for another scotch. Maya nodded, already calculating the route to the bar that would let her check on tables 9 and 12 simultaneously. Efficiency was survival in a place like the Sterling, where tips could make or break a month and the wealthy measured service in seconds. The evening rush had settled into its usual rhythm, the symphony of silverware against fine china, the bass note of masculine laughter, the soprano trill of women discussing charity galas and summer homes. Maya had worked at the Sterling for 2 years, long enough to recognize the patterns. Tuesday nights brought business dinners. Fridays were for celebrations and proposals. Saturdays, like tonight, attracted old money, the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. She just delivered the scotch when the front door opened with a gust of October air that smelled of rain and turning leaves. The hostess, Claudia, straightened immediately, her professional smile shifting into something more genuine. Maya glanced over out of habit and felt the temperature of the room change. The woman who entered was 70 if she was a day, but she wore her age like a crown. Silver hair swept back in an elegant chignon. A charcoal suit that probably cost more than Maya's car, if Maya had owned a car. But it was her presence that commanded attention. The way she moved as if she owned not just the restaurant but the very air inside it. Behind her walked a man in his 40s, protective hand hovering near her elbow, and a younger woman clutching a designer handbag like a shield. Mrs. Victoria Ashford, Claudia breathed to Maya as she passed. Be perfect. She owns half the city. Maya had heard the name. Everyone had. Ashford Industries had its fingers in real estate, technology, and philanthropy. Victoria Ashford was a legend. A woman who'd turned her late husband's modest fortune into an empire, who'd raised a daughter alone after tragedy struck, who gave millions to children's hospitals while reportedly being impossible to work for. The society pages called her a titan. Her former employees called her something less flattering. The hostess led the Ashford party to Table 1, the prime location with a view of both the restaurant and the gardens beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Maya wasn't assigned to that section, thank God, but she could feel the shift in energy as other servers adjusted their trajectories, as the sommelier appeared with the wine list, as the head chef himself emerged from the kitchen to greet the matriarch personally. Maya focused on her own tables. Table 4 needed water refills. Table 7 was ready for dessert menus. Table 9 wanted to know if the halibut was line-caught or farmed, and Maya summoned the practiced answer about sustainable fishing partnerships while her mind tracked 6 other tasks simultaneously. This was the meditation of service work. The present moment stretched and multiplied, awareness expanding to encompass every need before it was voiced. She was clearing table 12 when she felt eyes on her back. The sensation was specific, waited, different from the casual glances of customers trying to flag down their server. Maya turned, plates balanced against her hip, and found Victoria Ashford staring at her across the dining room. Not staring, fixating. The older woman had gone absolutely still, her water glass suspended halfway to her lips. Her eyes, sharp and gray as winter sky, were locked on Maya's hand. On the ring, the moment stretched. Victoria's face had gone pale, bloodless beneath expensive makeup. Her son leaned in, concerned, his hand on her shoulder. The younger woman, daughter-in-law maybe or assistant, followed Victoria's gaze to Maya and frowned. Then Victoria stood. The movement was abrupt enough that conversations at nearby tables stuttered to silence. She didn't excuse herself from her party. She simply rose and began walking toward Maya with the focused intensity of someone who'd spotted a ghost in a crowded room. Maya's heart kicked against her ribs. She'd seen that look before, the shock, the disbelief, the desperate need for something to make sense. It was the expression her mother had worn when the doctors delivered the cancer diagnosis. The face her best friend Tasha had made when her husband didn't come home. Recognition mixed with denial, hope drowning in confusion. Victoria crossed the dining room in 12 measured steps. The restaurant fell silent in waves, conversations extinguishing like candles as heads turned to follow her progress. Even the kitchen sounds seemed to dim, the clatter and hiss going muted as if the building itself held its breath. She stopped 3 feet from Maya, close enough that Maya could see the fine lines around her eyes. The tremor in her hands that suggested this composure cost her something. Victoria's gaze remained fixed on the ring, and when she finally spoke, her voice carried across the silent room like a stone breaking glass. "That ring." The words came out rough, scraped raw. "That ring belongs to my daughter." The plates in Maya's hands suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. Around them, the frieze was complete. Forks suspended above plates. Glasses held mid-sip. The sommelier stood like a statue with a wine bottle tilted at an impossible angle. Even the air seemed to stop moving, trapped between inhale and exhale. Maya found her voice, though it came out smaller than she'd intended. "I'm sorry, I think there's been. Where did you get it?" Victoria's voice sharpened, authority cutting through shock. This was the tone that built empires, that closed billion-dollar deals, that didn't accept deflection. "That ring. Tell me where you got it." Maya's manager, Richard, materialized at her elbow, his professional smile strained. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm sure there's been some confusion. Perhaps we could." "I'm not confused." Victoria didn't even look at him. Her eyes hadn't left the ring. "That's a custom piece. I commissioned it myself from a jeweler in Amsterdam 18 years ago. I watched him set that exact sapphire, Ceylon origin, internally flawless, with an inclusion pattern like a constellation. I had it made for my daughter's 21st birthday." Her voice cracked, barely perceptible. "For Elizabeth." The name fell into the silence like a body into water. Maya saw the ripple effect, recognition passing across the faces of older patrons, the kind who read obituaries and society pages. Elizabeth Ashford, the daughter who died. The tragedy that turned Victoria from a wealthy widow into a recluse for 2 years. "I found it," Maya said, her voice steadier now. 3 years ago, in a donation box at the community center on Morrison Street. I tried to find the owner. I posted notices. I asked around. Morrison Street. Victoria repeated the address like a prayer. "That's..." Elizabeth volunteered there. "Before." She swayed slightly, and her son was there instantly, steadying her. But she waved him off, her focus unbreakable. "Take it off. Please, let me see it." Maya's hand moved to the ring instinctively, protective. She'd worn it for 3 years. It had been with her through 2 apartments, 3 jobs, a failed relationship, and the long nights when her mother's medical bills had seemed impossible. The ring had become a talisman, a reminder that beautiful things could appear when you needed them most, that the world sometimes offered gifts without explanation. But the look on Victoria Ashford's face, that raw, aching hope mixed with grief, made Maya's fingers move despite herself. She slid the ring off, feeling suddenly naked without its familiar weight, and placed it carefully in Victoria's outstretched palm. The older woman's hands shook as she examined it. She turned it toward the light, studying the inside of the band where Maya had noticed faint engraving but could never quite make out the words. Victoria's lips moved silently, reading something Maya couldn't see. Then she closed her fist around the ring and brought it to her chest, eyes squeezing shut. "It's hers," she whispered. "God help me, it's Elizabeth's ring." The dining room erupted. Whispers spread like wildfire, forks finally clattering down, chairs scraping as people leaned toward their companions to share theories and questions. Richard was speaking rapidly, something about privacy and perhaps moving to his office. Victoria's son, tall, dark-haired, with his mother's sharp features softened by concern, tried to guide her back to their table. The younger woman hung back, watching Maya with open suspicion, but Victoria shook her head to all of it. She opened her eyes and looked at Maya, really looked at her, taking in the worn uniform, the tired eyes, the calloused hands of someone who worked too hard for too little. "What's your name?" "Maya. Maya Chin." "Maya." Victoria tested the name. "How old are you?" 26. Something passed across Victoria's face, calculation, hope, pain. Elizabeth would have been 27 last month. She glanced down at the ring in her hand, then back up at Maya. "I need to understand how you came to have this. I need to know everything. Will you tell me? Please." It wasn't the request Maya had expected. There was no accusation in Victoria's voice now, no demand. Just a mother's desperate need to find meaning in coincidence, to connect dots that might explain why her daughter's ring had found its way onto the hand of a stranger. "Yes," Maya heard herself say. "Yes. I'll tell you everything." Richard was protesting, citing policies and the disruption to other diners. But Victoria silenced him with a look that could have frozen lava. She gestured to her son. "Michael, have my driver bring the car around to the back. We're leaving. And arrange for a private room at the house, somewhere comfortable." She turned back to Maya. "What time does your shift end?" "Not until midnight, but you're finished now." Victoria's tone brooked no argument. "Michael will compensate the restaurant for the inconvenience. You'll come with us, we'll talk, and I'll have you driven home afterward." She paused, seeming to realize how this might sound. Imperious, commanding, exactly the reputation she'd earned. Her voice softened fractionally. "Please, I'm asking, not ordering. This ring? It's the last thing I gave my daughter before she died. I spent 5 years wondering what happened to it. I need to know." Maya looked at Richard, who seemed torn between outrage at the disruption and terror of offending the woman who could probably buy and close the sterling with a single phone call. She thought of her utility bill due next week, of the leak in her bathroom ceiling she couldn't afford to fix, of the careful budget that kept her surviving but never thriving. She thought of the ring in Victoria's hand, and the grief etched into every line of the older woman's face. "Okay," Maya said. "Let me get my things." The drive to the Ashford estate took 23 minutes, though it felt longer with Maya sitting in the back of a town car that smelled of leather and subtle cologne, watching the city give way to manicured suburbs and finally to the kind of neighborhood where houses hid behind gates and old trees. She changed out of her uniform in the Sterling's cramped staff bathroom, pulling on jeans and a sweater that suddenly felt shabby and thin. Her backpack, canvas, patched twice, holding her textbooks and a Tupperware container of yesterday's rice, sat at her feet like evidence of the chasm between her world and the one she was entering. Michael Ashford sat across from her, his expression carefully neutral. The younger woman, introduced tersely as Simone, Michael's wife, scrolled through her phone with studied disinterest. Victoria had taken a separate car, needing a moment to compose herself, which Michael had explained with the weary patience of someone who'd learned to translate his mother's emotional language. "So you're a student?" Michael asked, his tone making conversation without pressing. "Part-time. City College. Social work degree." Maya's hands twisted in her lap. "I work multiple jobs to pay for it, the restaurant, a grocery store, tutoring." "That's admirable. And exhausting," Michael said. "It's what you do when medical bills pile up." Maya shrugged, keeping it brief. Simone glanced up from her phone, her expression unreadable. How noble! The words could have been sincere, but the delivery made them blade-thin. Maya felt the judgment, the suspicion. She couldn't blame them. From their perspective, she was a stranger who'd appeared wearing their dead relative's jewelry, now being brought to their home. Of course they'd be wary. The car turned through iron gates that opened automatically, gliding up a driveway lined with Japanese maples just starting to turn gold and crimson. The house rose before them, not a mansion in the ostentatious sense, but something more refined. 3 stories of pale stone and tall windows, architecture that spoke of old money's preference for elegance over display. Lights glowed warmly in several rooms, and Maya could see gardens extending into darkness, the suggestion of fountains and sculpted hedges. Mom grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, Michael said quietly, following her gaze. She never forgets it. That's important for you to know. Whatever you might think about the house, the money, she built all this from nothing after my father died. She's not what people assume. What do people assume? Maya asked. That she's cold, calculating, a corporate shark who'd sacrifice anything for profit. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. They're not entirely wrong. She can be ruthless in business. But with family, with the people she loves. He stopped, his jaw tightening. Losing Elizabeth broke something in her, changed her. So when she looks at you, at that ring, she's seeing her daughter, Maya finished. She's seeing hope, Michael corrected. Which might be more dangerous. The car stopped. A man in a dark suit, security, Maya guessed, opened her door. She climbed out, backpack over one shoulder, feeling like an imposter in a movie about someone else's life. Victoria was already waiting on the front steps, the ring still clutched in her hand like a talisman. She'd removed her jacket, and without it she looked smaller, older, more vulnerable. "Thank you for coming," Victoria said, and the formality of it, the acknowledgement that Maya had chosen to be here, made something loose in Maya's chest. "Please come inside. We can talk in the library. It's more comfortable than the sitting room, and Elizabeth always loved it there." The mention of her daughter's name came easier now, as if the ring had unlocked something. Maya followed Victoria through a marble foyer, past rooms glimpsed through doorways, a formal dining room with a table that could seat 20, a music room with a grand piano, walls lined with art that probably cost more than Maya would earn in her lifetime. But Victoria led her away from these showpieces, down a hallway to a room that felt instantly different. The library was warm. That was Maya's first impression. Not just the temperature, though a fire burned in the stone fireplace, but the quality of the space itself. Books lined 3 walls from floor to ceiling, organized by some system Maya couldn't immediately decipher. Leather armchairs clustered near the fire, worn soft by use. A desk by the window held stacks of papers and a reading lamp. Photos in mismatched frames crowded the mantel, family pictures spanning decades, capturing birthday parties and graduations and ordinary moments made precious by time. Victoria gestured to one of the armchairs. "Please sit. Can I get you anything? Tea? Coffee? Something stronger?" "Water would be great, thank you." A staff member appeared, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who seemed to anticipate needs before they were voiced, and returned moments later with a tray bearing water, tea, and small sandwiches. Maya's stomach growled, reminding her she'd only managed to eat a protein bar during her shift. She took a sandwich, trying not to appear too eager, while Victoria settled into the chair across from her. Michael and Simone had disappeared somewhere, leaving just the 2 of them and the quiet crackle of the fire. Victoria set the ring on the small table between them, positioning it carefully so the sapphire caught the firelight. "Tell me about the day you found it," Victoria said. "Everything you remember." So Maya did. She described the community center, a converted church in a neighborhood most people drove through without stopping, where volunteers ran after-school programs for kids whose parents worked multiple jobs. She'd been sorting donations for the winter coat drive, a task she did every Sunday after her shift at the grocery store. The box had come in with others, no name attached. The ring was at the very bottom, wrapped in tissue paper. She paused. "I knew it meant something to someone, so I tried to find them." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through old photos to show Victoria the notices she'd posted. Pictures of the ring from different angles. Her phone number listed. Please for the owner to come forward. She'd posted them everywhere, the community center, coffee shops, neighborhood message boards. She'd even taken it to jewelers, hoping they might recognize the work. Why? Victoria asked, her voice soft. Maya looked at the ring, considering. Because it felt wrong. Like, this belonged to someone's story, you know? Someone had it made, chose that specific stone, had something engraved inside that mattered. It wasn't mine to sell. She met Victoria's eyes. After 6 months of trying to find the owner, I started wearing it. I told myself if the person showed up, I'd give it back immediately. But I needed something beautiful in my life. Something that reminded me the world could be kind. She felt foolish saying it out loud, this sentimental attachment to an object. But Victoria nodded as if it made perfect sense. The engraving, Victoria said. Could you ever make it out? Not really. I tried looking with different lights, even used a magnifying glass once, but it was too worn. I could see there were letters, but couldn't read them. Victoria picked up the ring, tilting it so Maya could see the inside of the band clearly. Brave heart, bright future, all my love. I had it inscribed the day before her birthday. Her thumb traced the words. Elizabeth had just decided to go back to school. She'd taken 2 years off after college, trying to figure out what she wanted to do with her life. Traveled, worked odd jobs, volunteered everywhere. She was searching for purpose, and she'd finally found it. She wanted to be a teacher. Elementary school. She said she wanted to be the person who made kids feel seen. The words hit Maya in the chest. That's what she wanted too. What drove her through exhaustion and debt toward a social work degree. The desire to be someone who showed up for people the world overlooked. She sounds wonderful, Maya said quietly. She was chaotic and brilliant and frustrating. Victoria smiled, tears glinting in her eyes. She forgot to pay bills, lost her keys constantly, could never be on time for anything. But she had this way of making people feel like they mattered. Strangers would tell her their life stories. Kids gravitated to her. She'd come home with ridiculous ideas, like the time she wanted to start a mobile library in a converted bus, or when she tried to organize a neighborhood garden in an empty lot and got arrested for trespassing. She got arrested? Maya couldn't help smiling. Twice. Once for the garden, once for chaining herself to a tree they were cutting down to build a parking lot. Victoria shook her head, but her expression was fond. She believed in things. Believed people were worth fighting for, that systems could change if enough people cared. It made her reckless sometimes. Made her think she was invincible. The smile faded. Maya waited, sensing the story's dark turn approaching. She died in a car accident, Victoria said. 5 years ago this November. Hit by a drunk driver while she was on her way home from a volunteer shift. The other driver walked away with minor injuries. Elizabeth. She stopped, composed herself. She died at the scene. She was wearing the ring that morning. I remember seeing it when she kissed me goodbye. But when the police returned her belongings, the ring wasn't there. Just her phone, her keys, her wallet. I asked about it, filed reports, called the hospital, the police station, the towing company. Everyone said they never saw it. Eventually, I had to accept it was lost. One more thing taken from me. Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes. She thought of her own mother's close call. Those terrible months when every phone call could be the hospital with bad news. The way hope and fear became inseparable. I'm so sorry, she said, knowing the words were inadequate. I can't imagine. No one can, until it happens to them. Victoria looked at the ring in her hand. And now here it is, carried back to me. She studied Maya's face. You're wearing her size. The ring fit your finger perfectly, didn't it? Maya nodded slowly, like it was made for me. Elizabeth was a size 6. Slim fingers like yours. She wore it on her right hand too. Said engagement rings were for the left. But this was a promise from herself to herself. A commitment to the future she was choosing. Victoria's voice wavered. And 3 years ago, you found it at a place she loved, where she spent her free time trying to help kids like the ones she wanted to teach. Don't you see? It's not a coincidence. It's Mrs. Ashford. Maya kept her voice gentle but firm. I understand that you want this to mean something, but I'm not. I'm not her. I'm just someone who needed winter coats for donations and found something valuable by accident. Are you? Victoria leaned forward. Tell me about yourself, Maya-chan. Tell me about the girl who works 3 jobs to pay for a degree in helping people, who found an expensive ring and tried to return it instead of selling it, who wears it as a reminder that the world can be kind. Tell me you're just anything. The intensity in her gaze made Maya uncomfortable. She could see where this was heading, the grieving mother finding meaning in coincidence, connecting dots into constellations that didn't exist. It was a kind of magical thinking Maya understood but couldn't enable. I grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment with my mom, Maya said carefully. My dad left when I was a baby. Mom worked as a hotel housekeeper for 23 years. Long hours, hard work, but she was always there for me. Told me I could be anything if I worked for it. She paused. When I was 17, I got into a 4-year college with a scholarship. Then Mom got her cancer diagnosis. I stayed home, took community college classes when I could afford them, and worked to help with bills. You gave up your dreams to take care of her, Victoria said. I didn't give them up. I just took a detour. Maya smiled slightly. Mom's been cancer-free for 2 years now. I'm still chipping away at my degree, still heading toward social work. It's taking longer than I planned, but I'm getting there. And along the way, I've learned things I wouldn't have in a regular college experience. What it's like to be one emergency away from losing everything. How easy it is to become invisible when you're poor. The way systems fail the people who need them most. She met Victoria's eyes. That's who I am. Not your daughter. Not some mystical sign from the universe. Just a regular person trying to make something of her life despite the obstacles. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. Finally, she said, Elizabeth wanted to start a foundation. Did I mention that? It was going to be her project after she finished her teaching degree. She wanted to create a network of support for women in situations like yours. Single mothers, daughters taking care of sick parents, anyone trying to get an education while surviving impossible circumstances. She'd been researching it, making plans, talking to people who ran similar programs. Maya's breath caught. That's exactly what we need. What so many people need. I know. After she died, I couldn't make myself do it. Felt like it should be her project, her legacy. I've donated to other organizations, funded scholarships, but I could never quite bring myself to start the thing she dreamed about. Victoria picked up the ring again, turning it in the firelight. Maybe that was a mistake. Maybe I should have honored her by continuing what she started. It's not too late, Maya said quietly. No. Victoria's expression shifted, determination replacing grief. No, it's not. She looked at Maya with sudden intensity. Help me. Help me build what Elizabeth wanted to create. You know what people like you need, you're living it. Work with me to design a program that actually helps, that doesn't just throw money at problems but provides real, sustainable support. Maya felt vertigo, as if the room had tilted. Mrs. Ashford, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not qualified to. You're the most qualified person I could ask. And please call me Victoria. She leaned forward, animated now. We'd compensate you, of course. A proper salary, benefits, time to finish your degree. You'd be a consultant initially, helping design the program. Then we'd find a role that fits your skills as you complete your education. Michael can draw up a contract, make it all official. It was too much, too fast. Maya's mind raced through implications. The money would solve everything, would lift the weight she'd carried for years. But it also felt dangerous, like accepting charity wrapped in the clothing of Elizabeth's ghost. Victoria wasn't really seeing her. She was seeing a chance to ease her guilt, to do for Maya what she couldn't do for her daughter. I need to think about it, Maya said. It's overwhelming. Of course. I'm sorry. I'm pushing too hard. That's what everyone always tells me. Victoria smiled ruefully. Take time. Consider it. But Maya, she held out the ring. This is yours. You found it, you cared for it, you tried to do right by it. Elizabeth would want you to keep it. Maya stared at the ring, conflicted. It's your daughter's. Your last gift to her. I can't. It found its way to you for a reason. Maybe not a cosmic one, maybe just chance and circumstance. But it's been yours for 3 years, and it clearly means something to you. So keep it. Please. It brings me comfort knowing it's with someone who appreciates it. Who'll think of Elizabeth when they wear it. Maya took the ring slowly, feeling its familiar weight in her palm. She thought about putting it back on immediately, but it felt different now, heavier with history, with grief and hope tangled together. She slipped it into her pocket instead. Thank you, she managed, for telling me about her, for trusting me with this. Thank you for coming here, for being patient with a grieving mother's questions. Victoria stood, and Maya followed suit. Let me have our driver take you home, and think about what I said about the foundation, the work we could do together. No pressure, but the offer stands. Michael appeared in the doorway as if summoned. Ready to go? The drive back to Maya's neighborhood reversed the journey. Wealth giving way to a comfortable middle class, giving way to the worn edges where Maya lived. Her apartment building stood 4 stories tall. Brick facade crumbling at the corners. Windows patched with tape and cardboard where glass had cracked. The driver pulled up to the curb, and Maya saw him take in the neighborhood with the careful neutrality of someone trained not to judge. Miss Chun, he said as she gathered her backpack. Mrs. Ashford wanted me to give you this. He handed her an envelope, thick and cream-colored. Maya opened it in the dim interior light. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note in elegant handwriting. For your mother's medical bills, or your tuition, or whatever you need most. No strings attached. Consider it a thank you for taking care of Elizabeth's ring. Maya's hands shook. $5,000. It would cover 3 months of debt payments, or a full semester of classes, or the bathroom ceiling repair and 100 other things. It was more money than she'd held at once in her entire life. It was also dangerous. She could feel herself being pulled into Victoria Ashford's orbit, into the gravitational field of grief and money and possibility. The smart thing would be to return the check, to thank Victoria politely and walk away from this strange intersection of their lives. But Maya thought of her mother's medical bills, of the careful calculations she did every month to decide which necessities to sacrifice. She thought of Elizabeth Ashford, who'd wanted to help people like her, who'd believed in fighting for those the world overlooked. She folded the check carefully and tucked it into her backpack. Thank you, she told the driver, and climbed out into the October night. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor, upstairs that creaked and groaned. The hallway smelled of cooking oil and old carpet. Mrs. Rodriguez's television blared through thin walls. Maya unlocked 3 separate locks, deadbolt, chain, door handle, and stepped into the 480 square feet she called home. It was cramped but clean. She'd made it as comfortable as possible with second-hand furniture and plants from the dollar store. Photos of her mother covered the refrigerator, alongside her class schedule and a calendar marked with work shifts in 3 different colors. Her textbooks dominated the desk she'd built from milk crates and a door. The bathroom ceiling sported a pot to catch drips from the leak her landlord ignored. Maya dropped her backpack, pulled out the ring, and sat on her bed. A mattress on the floor with blankets her abuela had crocheted before she died. She turned the ring in her fingers, reading the inscription now that she knew what it said. Brave heart, bright future, all my love. Had Elizabeth been wearing it when she died? Had it slipped from her finger in the crash, been picked up by a paramedic or a police officer or someone at the scene? Had they meant to turn it in and forgot, then later donated it among other items they were clearing out? Or had it traveled some other path, through pawn shops or thrift stores or strangers' hands, until it ended up in that donation box? Maya would never know. The ring's journey was a mystery, its arrival in her life either blind chance or something more meaningful, depending on how you chose to see it. She thought about Victoria's offer, the foundation, the work, the chance to help others while being helped herself. It appealed to every part of her that wanted to believe in justice, in systems that could work, in the possibility of using privilege to level playing fields. But it also scared her. She'd be taking money from a woman who saw her as a substitute daughter, stepping into a role Elizabeth should have filled. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mom. "How was work? Baby? Come by for dinner tomorrow?" Maya smiled, typing back, "Work was weird. I'll tell you about it over dinner. Love you." She set an alarm for 6 a.m. Grocery store shift started at 7, and changed into the oversized t-shirt she slept in. But before she turned off the light, she slipped the ring back onto her finger. It fit perfectly as it always had. Brave heart, bright future, all my love. Tomorrow she'd deposit Victoria's check and watch 3 months of anxiety dissolve. Tomorrow she'd figure out what to say about the foundation offer. Tomorrow she'd continue being Maya Chun, working 3 jobs, chasing a degree, surviving and occasionally thriving. Tonight, she'd sleep with a dead girl's ring on her finger and wonder what Elizabeth Ashford Wowell D have thought of her. Would they have been friends in some alternate universe where their paths crossed naturally? Would Elizabeth have understood the bone-deep exhaustion of working multiple jobs? Or would her privilege have made her compassionate but ultimately distant? Maya wanted to believe they'd have connected, 2 women who believed in fighting for others, in making the world slightly less cruel. She fell asleep with these thoughts circling, and dreamed of a woman she'd never met volunteering beside her at the community center, laughing as they sorted donated coats, the ring catching light on both their hands simultaneously. The grocery store shift the next morning was a blur of scanning items and forcing smiles at customers who treated her like furniture. Maya's manager, Derek, was in a mood, snapping at everyone, criticizing bag techniques, complaining about inventory. By her lunch break, Maya's feet ached and her customer service smile felt painted on. She ate her packed lunch, leftover rice and vegetables, in the break room while studying flashcards for her developmental psychology class. The material on attachment theory felt particularly relevant after last night. She thought about Victoria's attachment to the ring, to the idea of Maya as some kind of sign or substitute. Insecure attachment probably developed through the trauma of loss. "You look exhausted," said Carmen, another cashier who'd worked there for 15 years. She sat down with her own lunch, eyeing Maya with maternal concern. "You taking care of yourself, Mija?" "Trying to." Maya managed a genuine smile. Carmen reminded her of her own mother. Practical, warm, fiercely loyal to the people she claimed. "Just tired. Had a strange night." She almost told Carmen about Victoria, about the ring and the offer, but something stopped her. Felt too fragile, too unreal. Like speaking it aloud might make it evaporate or worse, might somehow curse it. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. Maya glanced at the screen and froze. The sender was Michael Ashford, and the subject line read, "Foundation Partnership Proposal." She opened it, heart hammering. Michael had drafted a formal proposal, complete with salary ranges, job descriptions, and a timeline for program development. The base salary he suggested was more than she currently made from all 3 jobs combined. There were benefits listed: health insurance, dental, vision, retirement matching, education stipend for completing her degree, flexible hours to accommodate her class schedule. It was everything she needed, everything she'd been struggling toward for years, suddenly offered on a silver platter. The proposal included a title, Program Development Consultant, Ashford Foundation Initiative. Below it, Michael had written a personal note. "Maya, I know this is sudden and I understand if you need time to consider. But I want you to know this isn't charity, and it's not my mother trying to replace Elizabeth. We've been discussing this project for years without moving forward. Your perspective is genuinely valuable, and you'd be earning this position through your lived experience and your commitment to social work. The compensation reflects market rate for consultant work in foundation development. This is a real job offer, not a handout. Take a week to think about it. Call me if you have questions. Michael." Maya read it 3 times, looking for the catch. There had to be one. Some expectation she couldn't meet, some way this would collapse and leave her worse off than before. But the terms seemed straightforward, the salary generous but not absurd, the role clearly defined. "Good news?" Carmen asked, noting Maya's expression. Maybe, Maya said slowly. I'm not sure yet. The rest of her shift passed in a distracted haze. Maya scanned groceries on autopilot while her mind spun through possibilities and pitfalls. She could finish her degree within a year if she only worked one job and took a full course load. She could pay off her mother's medical debt, fix the apartment ceiling, maybe even save money for the first time in her adult life. But she'd be tying herself to Victoria Ashford, to a grief-stricken billionaire who saw her as a connection to her dead daughter. What happened when Victoria realized Maya wasn't Elizabeth? When the novelty wore off and Maya was just another employee, expected to be grateful for the opportunity. She was still wrestling with it when she arrived at her mother's apartment that evening. Elena Chen lived in a slightly better neighborhood than Maya, in a two-bedroom unit she'd moved to after retiring from the hotel. The cancer had forced her retirement earlier than planned, but she'd managed to keep the apartment with help from her union pension and Social Security. "Baby!" Her mother opened the door, pulling Maya into a hug that smelled of the jasmine perfume she'd worn for 30 years. "You look tired. Are you eating enough?" "Mom, I'm fine." Maya followed her inside, where the table was already set for two. Her mother had made arroz con pollo, Maya's childhood favorite, and the smell made her suddenly ravenous. "This looks amazing." They settled in to eat, and Maya told her mother about the previous night. The ring, Victoria Ashford, the revelation about Elizabeth. Elena listened with widening eyes, occasionally interrupting with questions or exclamations in Spanish. "Dios mío," she said when Maya finished. "And she wants to hire you? To start this foundation? She wants me to help develop it, yeah?" Maya pushed rice around her plate. "What do you think?" Elena was quiet for a moment, considering. "What does your gut tell you? That it's too good to be true. That I should be suspicious. That I don't want to be someone's project or charity case." Maya met her mother's eyes. "But also that I'm exhausted, Mom. I'm so tired of struggling. And this could change everything." "Then you already know your answer," Elena said gently. "The question isn't whether to accept. It's whether you can protect yourself while accepting. Keep your boundaries. Remember who you are. Not let this woman's grief swallow you up." "I don't want to take advantage of her," Maya said. "She's grieving. She's vulnerable." The ring made her see connections that might not really be there. "Mija." Elena reached across the table to take Maya's hand. "You have been working 3 jobs for 4 years. You have sacrificed your education, your time, your youth to help me and to survive. You deserve help. You deserve support. If God or the universe or just dumb luck has brought you this opportunity, take it. But take it with your eyes open." Maya felt tears prickling. "What if I fail? What if I'm not smart enough? Not educated enough?" "Stop." Her mother's voice was firm. "You are brilliant. You are capable. You have been surviving impossible circumstances while still caring about others, still working toward your degree, still showing up. That woman needs you more than you need her. Remember that." They finished dinner talking about safer topics. Elena's garden, the neighbor's new puppy, a telenovela they both followed. But Maya felt lighter, clearer. Her mother was right. She'd been surviving impossible circumstances. Maybe it was time to do more than survive. That night, back in her apartment, Maya drafted an email to Michael. She kept it professional, grateful but not fawning. "Dear Michael, thank you for the detailed proposal. I'm very interested in the position and believe I could contribute meaningfully to developing the foundation Elizabeth envisioned. I have a few questions about the scope and structure of the role, and I'd appreciate the opportunity to discuss them in person. Would you and Victoria be available to meet this week? Best regards, Maya Chun." Maya read it 5 times before hitting send, then immediately wanted to take it back. But it was done. We're halfway through Maya's incredible journey. If you're invested in finding out what happens next, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who loves inspiring stories. Your support means everything. Now let's see what Maya decides. The email flew into the digital ether, carrying with it the possibility of a life she'd barely let herself imagine. The response came within an hour. "Excellent. How about Tuesday, 2 p.m. at the house? I'm looking forward to it. Michael." Tuesday was 3 days away. 3 days to research foundation development, to prepare questions, to decide exactly what boundaries she needed to protect herself. Maya opened her laptop and started Googling, taking notes in the margins of her psychology textbook. The weekend passed in a blur of work shifts and research. Maya asked her manager at the Sterling if she could reduce her hours to weekends only. Family situation, she explained vaguely, and Richard agreed with surprising ease. The restaurant was overstaffed anyway, and Maya suspected he was relieved to have one less person to schedule around. She kept the grocery store job for now, paid her rent and gave her health insurance, meager as it was. But she let herself imagine giving notice, working one job instead of 3, having time to study and sleep and maybe even have a life beyond survival. Sunday at the community center, Maya found herself seeing the place through new eyes. The building was showing its age. Cracked linoleum, outdated computers, donated furniture that had been third-hand before it arrived. But it was warm, welcoming. Kids shrieked happily in the gym. Volunteers organized the food pantry. In one corner, someone was teaching an ESL class to a group of elderly immigrants. This was what Elizabeth had loved. This ecosystem of mutual aid, of people showing up for each other without expectation of reward. Maya had taken it for granted, had simply shown up every Sunday because it felt right. Now she wondered what it would be like to help places like this systematically, to build programs that supported the volunteers, that funded the work, that replicated this model in other neighborhoods. "You seemed thoughtful today," said James, the center's director. He was in his 60s, a former teacher who'd started the center 20 years ago and had been running it on grants and prayer ever since. "Everything okay?" Maya hesitated, then decided to tell him. She explained about the ring, about Victoria, about the foundation proposal. James listened intently, his weathered face unreadable. "Elizabeth Ashford," he said when she finished. "I remember her. She volunteered here, must be 7 or 8 years ago. Bright girl, full of energy. Always trying to organize us into being more efficient." He smiled. "We were sorry when she stopped coming, but people move on. Then we heard about the accident." "What was she like?" Maya asked. "When she was here, I mean, passionate, sometimes frustratingly idealistic. She'd propose these elaborate programs without thinking through the logistics. But her heart was absolutely in the right place." James studied Maya. "If you can help Victoria build something in Elizabeth's name, something that actually works and helps people, you should do it. But Maya," he paused, "don't lose yourself in someone else's dream. Make sure there's room for your own vision too." It was advice Maya needed to hear. She'd been so focused on whether accepting Victoria's offer was ethical that she hadn't stopped to ask what she wanted from it. What would Maya Chen's version of this foundation look like? What would she prioritize, emphasize, fight for? She spent Sunday evening making lists. Not just questions for Victoria, but ideas, programs she'd want to see, ways to avoid the paternalism that plagued so much charity work, strategies for actually listening to the people they aimed to help instead of assuming they knew what was needed. By the time Tuesday afternoon arrived, Maya had a notebook full of notes and a clear sense of what she needed from this conversation. She dressed carefully, not trying to look wealthy, but professional. Dark jeans, a button-down shirt, her one pair of decent shoes. She pulled her hair back, put on minimal makeup, and studied herself in the mirror. She looked older than 26. The years of work had etched themselves around her eyes, in the set of her shoulders. But there was strength there too. She'd earned every year, every shadow. They were evidence of her survival, her persistence, her refusal to give up. The ring was on her finger. She'd considered leaving it home, thought maybe it would be easier to keep boundaries without it. But it felt wrong. The ring was hers now, part of her story whether or not she took this job. She wouldn't hide it. Michael's driver picked her up at 1:30, allowing plenty of time for traffic. Maya spent the drive reviewing her notes, rehearsing key points she wanted to make. But when the car pulled up to the Ashford estate, her carefully prepared confidence wavered. This was really happening. She was really about to negotiate a job with a billionaire, to potentially change the entire trajectory of her life. Brave heart, bright future, the ring seemed to whisper. "All my love." Maya took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. Victoria met her at the door personally, which felt significant. No staff intermediary, no formal receiving room. Just the older woman standing in the foyer, dressed more casually than their first meeting. Slacks and a cashmere sweater, reading glasses perched on her head. Maya, thank you for coming. She gestured toward a different part of the house. I thought we'd meet in my office. Michael's already there, and I've asked our foundation attorney to join us as well. I hope that's all right. I want this to be official, properly documented. Maya's stomach fluttered with nerves, but she kept her voice steady. That's good. I appreciate the transparency. The office was impressive without being intimidating. Large desk, walls of bookshelves, windows overlooking the gardens. Michael sat in one of several chairs arranged in a conversational cluster rather than across the imposing desk. A woman in her 50s stood as Maya entered, extending her hand. Diane Richardson, family attorney and foundation counsel. Pleased to meet you, Ms. Chun. Maya, please. She shook Diane's hand, noting the woman's firm grip and assessing gaze. This was someone who protected the Ashfords' interests. Maya would need to be careful. They settled into chairs, and Victoria began without preamble. I want to be direct. After you left Saturday night, I couldn't stop thinking about Elizabeth's dream for this foundation. Michael and I talked for hours. We pulled out her old notes, her research, her plans. And we realized we'd been approaching this all wrong. She pulled out a worn journal, its cover decorated with stickers and doodles. This was Elizabeth's planning notebook. She filled it over 6 months before she died. Listen to what she wrote here. Victoria opened to a marked page and read, "Most foundations are built from the top down. Rich people deciding what poor people need, designing programs that look good on paper but ignore reality. I want to do the opposite. Find people who've lived the struggles, who understand from the inside out. Pay them properly. Give them power, not just input. Build something that actually works because it's designed by people who needed it themselves." Victoria looked up at Maya. That's you. You're exactly who Elizabeth wanted to find. Maya felt the weight of those words, the pressure of being seen as an answer to a dead woman's vision. But she pushed past the discomfort. I appreciate that, and I have a lot of ideas about what could work. But I need to be clear about something first. She opened her notebook, looking at her prepared talking points. I'm not Elizabeth. I can't be her replacement, and I won't try to be. If you're hiring me because you see her in me, or because you want to recapture something you lost, then this won't work. I need to know you're hiring me for my actual skills and perspective, not as some kind of living memorial. The room went silent. Michael's eyebrows rose. Diane looked impressed. Victoria's expression was unreadable. Then Victoria smiled, genuine, appreciative. Good. That's exactly the kind of clarity we need. You're right. And I won't pretend my feelings about the ring, about the timing of meeting you, aren't complicated. But Michael helped me understand something. She glanced at her son. I've been paralyzed by grief, unable to start this foundation because I was trying to preserve Elizabeth's vision perfectly, like a museum exhibit. But that's not what she would have wanted. She would have wanted the work done by someone passionate and qualified, even if they did it differently than she would have. Michael leaned forward. We're not looking for Elizabeth 2.0. We're looking for Maya Chun, someone who understands poverty, education barriers, healthcare debt, system failures. Someone who can help us build something effective. Your perspective is valuable because of who you are, not because of any connection to our family. Maya studied them both, looking for signs of insincerity. But they seemed genuine. Okay, then let's talk about structure. Because I have concerns about how this could work. She flipped to her notes. I've spent the last 3 days researching foundation models. I looked at what works and what fails. And the biggest problem I see is that most nonprofits and foundations become disconnected from the people they serve. The boards are full of wealthy donors. The executive directors are professionals who've never experienced the problems they're trying to solve. The programs are designed in conference rooms, not communities. Exactly Elizabeth's concern, Victoria murmured. So if we're doing this, I want to propose a different structure. Maya's confidence grew as she articulated ideas she'd been refining. The advisory board should be at least 50% people with lived experience, former recipients of aid, people currently navigating the systems we're trying to improve, community organizers. They should be compensated for their time at consulting rates, not expected to volunteer their expertise. She continued, outlining a vision that had crystallized over the weekend. The foundation should focus on direct aid, but also systemic change. We give women money to pay for school or childcare or medical bills, that's important. But we also advocate for policy changes that would make those supports unnecessary. We partner with existing community organizations instead of trying to build everything ourselves. We measure success not just by how many people we help, but by whether we're actually reducing the need for help. Diane was taking notes. Michael nodded along. Victoria watched Maya with an expression that mixed pride and sadness, probably imagining Elizabeth delivering a similar pitch. The role you're offering me, Maya continued, program development consultant. What does that actually mean day to day? Michael pulled out a folder. We've drafted a more detailed job description based on our initial proposal. Essentially, you'd be working with Victoria, myself, and eventually other staff to design the foundation's programs from the ground up. You'd research best practices, conduct community needs assessments, develop pilot programs. Once we have a working model, you'd help hire and train staff, establish partnerships, and create evaluation metrics. It's a huge amount of work, Diane added, which is why the compensation reflects that. This isn't a part-time consulting gig. It's a serious position that could evolve into a permanent role as the foundation grows. Maya looked at the salary figure again. It still seemed surreal. And my education? The proposal mentioned flexibility for finishing my degree. Essential, not just flexible, Victoria said firmly. We want you to complete your social work degree. It'll make you more effective in this role, and it's important for your own career development. The foundation will cover tuition and books, and will work around your class schedule. In fact, we'd encourage you to structure your capstone project or thesis around foundation work. Make it count double. It was almost too good. Maya waited for the catch, the hidden expectation. What about editorial control? If I think a program won't work, or if I disagree with the direction the foundation wants to take, what happens? That's why we hired you, to tell us when we're wrong, Michael said. Obviously, Victoria technically has final say since it's her money funding this. But we're structuring the foundation with checks and balances. The advisory board I mentioned would have real power to approve or veto programs. Your role would include presenting recommendations to that board, not just to us. Diane spoke up. I've drafted contract language that protects your position. You can't be fired for disagreeing with direction or recommending against a program. The only grounds for termination would be clear ethical violations, illegal activity, or documented failure to fulfill job responsibilities. And any termination would come with 6 months severance. Maya read through the contract language Diane showed her. It seemed solid, protective, but she still felt like she was missing something. Why me, though? Really? You could hire someone with a PhD in social work, someone with years of foundation experience, someone who actually knows what they're doing. Why offer this to someone who hasn't even finished their bachelor's degree? Victoria and Michael exchanged a glance. Finally, Victoria spoke. Because you remind me that good intentions aren't enough. When you called me out earlier, said you wouldn't be Elizabeth's replacement. You weren't trying to please me or tell me what I wanted to hear. You were protecting yourself and the integrity of this work. That's rare. Most people in your position would just take the money and say yes to everything. She leaned forward, intense. I've spent 40 years in business, Maya. I've learned to spot authenticity. You have it. You also have something we desperately need, current, lived experience of the systems we're trying to change. Your knowledge is fresh, relevant, unfiltered by years of professional distance. Yes, we'll also hire people with PhDs and foundation experience. But we need your voice to keep us honest, to stop us from falling into the same traps other foundations do. Maya wanted to believe it. God, she wanted to believe it. The chance to do meaningful work, to be paid fairly, to finish her education without drowning in debt. It was everything she dreamed about during those late-night study sessions after double shifts. But a voice in her head, maybe her mother's, maybe her own hard-won caution, whispered warnings. What happened when the grief-fueled urgency faded? When Victoria got busy with her other projects? When Maya inevitably failed to live up to idealized expectations? I need time, she said. Not long. But I need to think about this and talk to people I trust. This is a life-changing decision. Of course, Michael said immediately. Take a week. Talk to lawyers if you want. We'll pay for you to have an independent legal review of the contract. Talk to mentors, family, anyone whose opinion you value. And Maya, Victoria's voice softened. Whatever you decide, keep the ring. Keep the check I gave you. Those aren't contingent on you taking this job. They're separate. A thank you for taking care of something precious, and a small help with your mother's bills. No strings. Maya felt tears threaten and pushed them back. Thank you. That means a lot. They talked for another hour, going through details, answering Maya's questions about health insurance and retirement plans and what flexible schedule really meant in practice. Diane gave her copies of all the contract documents to review. Michael provided a list of foundations they'd studied, research they'd compiled, Elizabeth's original notes that they'd digitized. When Maya finally left, her head was spinning and her backpack was heavy with papers. The driver offered to take her anywhere she wanted, home, her mother's place, wherever. Maya asked to be dropped at her college's library. She needed somewhere quiet to process, to lay out all these documents and really think. The library was mostly empty on a Tuesday afternoon. Maya claimed a study carrel in the back corner and spread out her materials. Contract language, job descriptions, foundation research, Elizabeth's notes in their flowing, enthusiastic handwriting. She started with Elizabeth's journal. Victoria had given her the digitized version, but also a few photographs of actual pages. The handwriting was bubbly, decorated with stars and underlining and margin doodles. It was the handwriting of someone young, optimistic, convinced they could change the world. The entries jumped around, research notes mixed with personal reflections mixed with practical planning. Maya found herself drawn to the personal sections, where Elizabeth processed her own privilege and tried to figure out how to use it responsibly. One entry, dated 2 years before Elizabeth's death. Talk to Maria today at the center. She's working 2 jobs, taking night classes, raising her kid alone. She's exhausted but won't complain, just keeps going. I told her she's amazing and she looked at me like I was crazy. Like survival isn't something to be proud of, it's just what you do. That's what I don't get. How do you help someone who doesn't think they deserve help? How do you build a system that respects their strength while also giving them support? Maya sat back, unsettled. That could have been written about her. She was Maria. Proud, tired, convinced that asking for help was weakness. Was that why this opportunity felt dangerous? Because accepting it meant admitting she needed help? Her phone rang. Tasha, her best friend since high school. Maya answered gratefully, needing to hear a familiar voice. Hey stranger, you've been MIA. Is everything okay? Maya laughed, slightly hysterical. Define okay. My life might be about to completely change, or I might be about to make a terrible mistake. Hard to tell which. Okay, you have to explain that. So Maya did, pouring out the whole story. The ring, Victoria, the job offer, her confusion about whether this was an opportunity or a trap. Tasha listened without interrupting, which was one of the things Maya loved about her. She didn't jump in with solutions, just held space for the complexity. Damn, Tasha said when Maya finished. That's a lot. What's your gut telling you? That I want to say yes, but also that I'm scared. Scared of what specifically? Maya thought about it. Failing, not being good enough, getting attached to this life and then having it yanked away, being seen as charity case instead of professional. Take your pick. All valid fears, Tasha said. But Maya, and I say this with love, you've been scared for 4 years, scared of your mom dying, scared of drowning in debt, scared of never finishing school. Fear hasn't stopped you from doing hard things before. Why let it stop you now? Because those hard things were necessary. This is a choice. Exactly. It's a choice. You get to choose something good for yourself instead of just surviving what life throws at you. That's allowed, you know. You're allowed to want things, to accept help, to believe good luck when it shows up. Maya felt something crack open in her chest. When had she started believing she didn't deserve good fortune? That she had to earn every scrap of comfort through suffering? What if it doesn't work out? She asked quietly. Then you'll have experience working for a foundation, professional references from actual billionaires, and some financial breathing room. Even if it fails spectacularly, you'll be better off than you are now. Tasha paused. Look, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you that from the outside, watching you run yourself into the ground for years, this looks like a miracle. Don't talk yourself out of a miracle because you're afraid of what it might cost. They talked for another 20 minutes, Tasha filling Maya in on her own life. New job, ongoing drama with her in-laws, the puppy she just adopted. Normal life things that felt grounding. When they hung up, Maya felt clearer. She spent the next 3 hours in the library, making lists. Pros and cons questions to ask. Deal breakers and compromises. She looked up Diane Richardson, confirmed she was a legitimate attorney with a good reputation. She researched Victoria Ashford beyond the society page mentions, finding articles about her business practices, her philanthropy, interviews where she discussed her approach to work and life. What emerged was a complex picture. Victoria could be ruthless. There were stories of her firing entire departments, of hostile negotiations, of competitors who underestimated her and paid dearly. But she was also described as fiercely loyal to people who proved themselves, as someone who valued competence above all else, who gave second chances to employees who made honest mistakes but came clean about them. She wasn't a saint, but she wasn't a villain either. Just a person with power trying to use it in ways that made sense to her. Maya could work with that. Maybe. By the time the library closed at 9 p.m., Maya had made her decision. She'd accept the job, with specific conditions she'd negotiated in her own mind. A 3-month trial period. Monthly check-ins with Victoria and Michael about whether it was working for everyone. An explicit understanding that she could walk away if the role became untenable, and that they could end the arrangement if she wasn't meeting expectations, with the severance Diane had promised. She'd protect herself, set boundaries, keep one foot planted in her old life until she was sure the new one was stable. But she'd say yes. The decision made, Maya felt simultaneously lighter and more terrified. She drafted an email to Michael on her phone as she walked to the bus stop. After careful consideration, I'd like to accept the position. I have a few conditions I'd like to discuss before signing the contract, but I'm genuinely excited about the work we could do together. When can we meet to finalize details? Maya. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The bus arrived, and Maya climbed on, finding a seat near the back. The ring caught the fluorescent light, sapphire glowing. Brave heart, bright future. Okay, Elizabeth, Maya thought. I'm trusting this. Don't let me down. Her phone buzzed 15 minutes later. Michael's response, excellent news. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., we'll work through any concerns and finalize everything. Congratulations, Maya. I think this is the beginning of something important. Maya stared at the message, her reflection ghostly in the bus window. 24 hours from now, her life would be completely different. New job, new income, new possibilities, new responsibilities, new expectations, new ways to fail. The bus rumbled through neighborhoods that shifted from commercial to residential to the worn edges where Maya lived. She got off at her stop and walked the 3 blocks to her building, hyper-aware of every detail. The crack in the sidewalk she always stepped over, the bodega on the corner where she bought milk and eggs, Mrs. Rodriguez watering her plants on the fire escape. This was her life. Real, solid, known. Was she really ready to leave it behind? Not leaving it, she corrected herself. Expand it. Add to it. She'd still live here, the salary was good, but not move immediately to a luxury apartment good. She'd still be Maya Chun from the 3rd floor walk-up. Just Maya Chun with more options, more security, more ability to help others the way she'd always wanted. In her apartment, she called her mother. "I'm taking the job," she said when Elena answered. "I'm scared, but I'm doing it." Her mother's reply was immediate, fierce. "Good. I'm proud of you, baby. You're going to do amazing things." They talked for an hour, Elena asking practical questions about insurance and start dates and whether Maya would need new clothes for the office. Normal mother concerns that made the surreal situation feel manageable. By the time they hung up, Maya felt grounded again. She set her alarm for 7 a.m., early enough to shower, dress professionally, review her notes before the meeting. Then she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling water stain she'd been meaning to photograph for the landlord, and tried to imagine what her life would look like a month from now, 6 months, a year. Would she still be working at the grocery store on weekends, or would she finally give notice? Would she move to a better apartment, or stay here where rent was cheap and neighbors were familiar? Would she and Victoria develop a real working relationship, or would the ghost of Elizabeth always hang between them? Impossible to know. The future was opaque, uncertain, full of variables she couldn't control. But for the first time in years, Maya let herself hope. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. That struggle wasn't her permanent state. That she could accept help without losing herself. The ring on her finger caught moonlight from the window. Maya twisted it absently, a habit she'd developed over 3 years of wearing it. Tomorrow she'd sign contracts that would change her life. Tonight, she'd sleep with Elizabeth Ashford's ring on her hand and Elizabeth Ashford's dream becoming hers to fulfill. It felt like a promise. To a dead woman she'd never met, to a grieving mother looking for meaning, to herself and her own stubborn refusal to give up. Maya closed her eyes and let exhaustion pull her under, into dreams of foundations and futures, and the weight of other people's hope resting on her shoulders like a blessing and a burden combined. The next morning arrived with autumn sunshine and Maya's determination only slightly diminished by anxiety dreams. She'd spent the night running through elaborate disaster scenarios, signing the contract only to discover it was actually an indentured servitude agreement, showing up to meetings and realizing she had no idea what she was doing, Victoria suddenly seeing her clearly and revoking everything in disgust. None of these fears were rational, but at 7 a.m. while she showered in her cramped bathroom with its perpetual drip and questionable water pressure, they felt entirely plausible. She dressed carefully in her interview outfit, the same dark jeans and button-down from yesterday, because they were literally the most professional clothes she owned. She'd need to buy work clothes soon, she realized. The foundation salary would allow for that. The thought was simultaneously exciting and overwhelming. Maya caught the 8:30 bus, giving herself plenty of time. She used the ride to review her list of conditions. The 3-month trial period, explicit boundaries around working hours, clarity about decision-making authority, and a formal mentorship arrangement with someone who had actual foundation experience. Reasonable requests, she thought. If Victoria and Michael balked at any of them, that would tell her something important about what kind of working relationship they expected. The Ashford estate looked different in morning light. Less imposing, more like an actual home. Gardens she'd only glimpsed in darkness revealed themselves as meticulously maintained, with late-season roses still blooming and ornamental grasses catching the breeze. A gardener waved at the car as it passed, friendly and casual. Michael met her at the door this time, dressed more casually than their previous meetings in jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent but looked comfortable. "Good morning. Coffee? Please, yes, thank you." Maya followed him to a bright kitchen that managed to be both enormous and somehow cozy. Windows overlooked the gardens and someone, staff presumably, had laid out pastries and fruit alongside a professional-looking espresso machine. "Mom's on a conference call, but she'll join us in a few minutes. Diane's on her way." Michael made Maya a cappuccino with practiced ease. "How are you feeling about everything?" "Terrified and excited in equal measure," Maya admitted. "Is that normal?" "Completely. I felt the same way when I took over my first major project at the company. Imposter syndrome is real, especially when you're young and given significant responsibility." He handed her the coffee, perfectly made, creamy and strong. "But that fear? It's actually useful." It means you care about doing it right, that you're not arrogant enough to think you already know everything. The people who scare me are the ones who charge in with total confidence and no humility. They settled at a kitchen table that was smaller than the formal dining rooms but still large enough to seat 8. Maya sipped her coffee and felt some of her tension ease. Michael was good at this, making people comfortable, bridging conversation with business. Maya appreciated it, even as she mentally prepared for the negotiations ahead. Victoria entered 10 minutes later, perfectly composed despite the early call. She greeted Maya warmly and settled across from her with her own coffee. Diane arrived shortly after, briefcase in hand and all business. "Let's talk through your concerns," Victoria said simply. Maya laid out her conditions clearly, fighting the urge to apologize for having needs. The 3-month trial period made sense to everyone. It protected both parties, gave them time to assess fit. The mentorship arrangement Victoria agreed to immediately, suggesting a consultant she'd worked with who had 30 years in nonprofit development. Working hours and boundaries took more discussion, but they landed on a flexible framework that prioritized results over face time. By 11 a.m., they'd worked through every concern. Diane revised contract language on her laptop while they talked. When she finally printed the final version, Maya read it twice, slowly, looking for traps her exhausted brain might have missed. But it was clean, fair, real. "One more thing," Victoria said as Maya reached for the pen. She slid Elizabeth's journal across the table. "This is yours now too. Her notes, her research, her dreams. Build from them or diverge completely, your choice. But I want you to have them." Maya's throat tightened as she accepted the journal, feeling its weight. Not just the physical object, but everything it represented. A young woman's hopes, a mother's grief, and now her own responsibility to honor both while staying true to herself. She signed her name, the pen moving smoothly across the paper. Maya Chan. Not Elizabeth's replacement. Not Victoria's project. Just herself, stepping into a future she'd barely dared to imagine. The ring caught the light as she wrote, sapphire glowing like a promise kept. She thought of that Sunday 3 years ago, digging through donated coats, finding something beautiful when she needed it most. She thought of Elizabeth, who'd wanted to help people like her. She thought of her mother, who'd sacrificed everything so Maya could have choices. And she thought of herself, tired, stubborn, still standing after years of impossible circumstances, ready, finally, to do more than just survive. "Welcome to the Ashford Foundation," Victoria said softly, and Maya heard the emotion beneath the words. Not just welcome, but thank you. Not just gratitude, but hope. Maya looked up and smiled. "Let's build something that matters." The ring caught the light as she wrote, and Maya smiled. Brave heart, bright future indeed. Thank you so much for watching Maya's story to the end. If this touched your heart, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. What did you think of Maya's journey? Let us know in the comments below. See you in the next story.